Midsummer in Norway, days when the sun never really sets. An entire country is blossoming. The highlight of the longest day of the year are the big fires. Midsummer, long days, bright nights, a celebration of raw nature. Norway's south, countless islands, barren rocky coasts, and majestic fjords. A landscape so vast that man, as here at Preikestolen, seems like an insignificant pipsqueak. Norway is about the size of Germany and one of the largest countries in Europe. But only about 5.3 million people live here. The capital is Oslo. Bergen is the second largest city in the kingdom. At Midsummer, the whole country looks at the coastal town of Alesund. Alesund's fishing buoy, symbol of the town's most important industry. Alesund's Old Town is a unique Art Nouveau ensemble in Norway. In January 1904, a major fire destroyed almost all the wooden houses. The German Emperor and Norway admirer Wilhelm II sent help and had the city rebuilt in stone. The people of Alesund have a special relationship with fire. On a small rocky island off the coast, a wooden tower grows into the air every year at Midsummer, built by young people of the city. On Midsummer's Eve, their work is to go up in flames. This year, the fire chief is 18-year-old Oscar Benoni.
The people here are between 12 and 18 years old. They come because it's a tradition, but the social aspect is also important. We're a close-knit community which appeals to many. That is tradition in Alesund, and we are insanely proud of our fire.
This tower building is a rite of passage for the young men. No adult interferes. A summer free space for the young people. The Slinningsbålet, named after the small island where it takes place, is the largest midsummer bonfire in Norway. The work is not without danger. After all, the tower will be around 40 meters high.
Yes, it is very high, but the backup is very good. It fits well, and the helmet keeps out a lot of risk of injury if something falls on our head. Planks or something.
A pretty daring climb. Loss can be expected. The boys climb the tower and form a chain. For hours, they persevere up there. In 2016, they made it into the Guinness Book of Records. At 47 meters, their tower was the tallest St. John's bonfire in the world. Piece by piece, pallets and barrels are handed up.
For 2 months we're here every day, piling things up. It's very exhausting. But when St. Hans arrives, it's all worth it for that. I do it to then burn it all down. It's great fun. It's kind of like a hobby.
Every year the young people elect a new fire chief. He keeps the group together and coordinates the construction work. Quite a lot of responsibility for 18-year-old Oscar. And then there's also the weather.
I hope that tomorrow won't be too windy. When it's windy, the fire becomes particularly blatant. But as long as it stays like this, we'll be fine. I would have liked bright sunshine, but unfortunately we won't get it. As long as it doesn't rain, it's all good. Then we'll get the material up.
They work until the morning. At midnight, it's still bright in Alesund. The sun touches the horizon, but doesn't set. As if enchanted, the fjords lie in the midsummer light. From mid-June to early July, it never really gets dark. Until the 1960s, Norway was one of the poorest countries in Europe. Many people live from agriculture. Summer is the time to drive the cattle to the higher mountain pastures, where there is enough food for the animals and the farmers can produce supplies for the winter. Some of these mountain pastures are still shepherded today. In Sanddalen in the province of Innlandet, Katarina Sparstad spends the summer in her family's mountain cabin. Around Midsommar, she goes up into the mountains with her horses, cows and goats, just as her mother and grandmother did before her. Time for milking. The cows know the daily ritual and come to the barn voluntarily. Up here on the mountain pasture, there is no electricity and no milking machine.
The cow stands very still because it feels safe and likes to be milked. There must be something personal about that. Then they also come home for milking every day at about 4 or 5 o'clock because they feel like it. They like coming home because they feel that I take care of them. They know me and I know them. They all have names. Over there is Mark Rosa, and this is Flora, and this is Sillerin, and this is Wrestling, and this is Trude. Right, Flora? When the cows eat the mountain grass, the milk becomes especially good. The butter becomes more yellow. The cheese tastes better and the animals do excellently. The cows like being able to move around freely, and being there is insanely nice and homely.
After the mountain pasture had been deserted for a few years, Katarina resumed the family tradition. She makes butter, cream and cheese from the fresh milk. The mountain pasture is inhabited only in summer. In winter, Katarina lives in the valley with her husband Niels. Niels is a teacher and spends his vacations here. The Alpine farming is his wife's business.
The mountain pasture was the workplace of the women, and all the children came up with them, own nieces, nephews and children from the village. There were tons of children. Most of them helped, fetched cows, made cheese, churned butter. The men were down on the farm. They mowed the meadows and did the work that needed to be done downstairs. This was the women's realm. And the absurd thing is that we are trapped in fixed routines from 5, 6, 7 in the morning until late at night. But still, it gives you a sense of freedom.
Katarina has not changed anything in the Alpine hut and works with the equipment of her predecessors. Separating the cream from the whey is just as strenuous as it was 100 years ago. The Norwegians make a very special cheese from the waste product of the centrifuging process, the sweet whey. What makes it special is that it tastes sweet.
Good. In Norway, we call it brunost. This is when concentrated by boiling. Very simple.
Everyone thinks this should taste like French cheese, but it's sweet like caramel.
This is caramel.
In France, they give it to the pigs, but in Norway, we eat it.
Do they? Do they give it to the pigs in France? Terrible. It's valuable.
Sparstad Elm is located in the middle of an unspoiled mountain environment. According to legend, spirits live here, which can benefit people, but also harm them. Further north, at the foot of the Dovrefjell Mountains, the climate becomes harsher. Large parts of Oppdal municipality lie above the tree line. The Arctic fox feels at home in this frosty climate. In summer, it has grey-brown fur, the perfect camouflage in the stony environment. Craig Johnson is the only human resident at the Arctic fox nursery in the mountains of Oppdal. Craig is a biologist from South Africa. His scientific interest has taken him from the deep south to the northern end of the world.
Arctic foxes have declined in Norway and Scandinavia in general over a period of several decades, even though they had received protection from hunting and so forth. So around about in the year 2000, there were only approximately 40 to 60 adult individuals left.
The Norwegian Institute for Nature Research, or NINA for short, breeds the polar foxes in order to release them into the wild later. They should have as little contact with humans as possible so that they can later survive in the wild.
So in this enclosure here, we've got the adult breeding pair and 6 puppies, which are about 2 months old.
The foxes are very shy. It's only when Craig comes with the food bucket that the male becomes curious.
he's very relaxed. He always is. He's always inquisitive. Whenever we move around the enclosure to feed or to do something, he always comes up and has a sniff and looks and wants to see what we're doing. The mother, on the other hand, she's far more shy, so you didn't really see her too much.
After a while, she too becomes brave. The environment in the enclosure is designed as naturally as possible so that the Arctic fox parents create a protective burrow where the female gives birth to the cubs. Now, in mid-June, it's time for the cubs to leave the nursery to get to know nature.
They're gradually spending more and more time above ground. So until recently, they haven't spent much time outside of the den. But now, as they're getting bigger, they're spending more and more time above ground and playing with one another and investigating.
The parents playfully teach the little ones how to hunt. Next spring, the young animals are released into the wild. The parent pairs remain in the station. So far, 430 Arctic foxes have already been released into the wild. Hopefully, these little ones will survive. Norway is famous for its impressive landscape. The fjords are inlets formed during the Ice Age. Bizarre rock formations remain. Preikestolen is a rocky peak. The edge vertically drops 600 meters into the Lyse fjord. Norway's first oil field was discovered off the coast of Stavanger in 1969. This triggered an economic boom that made the poor country rich. Norway produces around 92 million tons of crude oil a year. The oil industry is the most important economic factor and at the same time the biggest polluter. Tourism also is an economic power. More than 2,300 cruise ships docked at Norwegian ports every year before the pandemic. Almost a must, the stop in Bergen. The port has long been Norway's gateway to the world. Dried fish, herring, furs, and wood are exported. When the Hanseatic League was founded in the 13th century, a main branch was established in Bergen. The office buildings at the harbour are the symbol of the old merchant city. In the historic district of Bryggen, the past comes alive again. In Norway, about 80% of the population lives near the sea. Almost everyone owns a boat. The Oselva is a wooden boat that has a long tradition on the Norwegian west coast. Berit Osmundsen is one of the few who can still build it.
The boat gives me something back. After each stroke, the boat moves on. A plastic rowing boat stops when you're not rowing. This boat just keeps gliding, and that is important.
Berit Osmundsen also is one of the last to still apprentice with Harald Dalland, a traditional boat builder. There are no construction plans for the Oselva. The art of construction is passed from one boat builder to another. Berit uses traditional tools such as the axe. This boat-building tradition goes back to the Vikings, whose boats still are models today.
This will be an Osselvar. This type of boat comes from western Norway, mainly from the old Hordaland. This boat here is a large Osselvar with which 8 people can row. But I want to talk about a special detail which is easy to recognize. The profile bars here and on the gunnel have the same shape that you find on a Viking ship. They keep the sea ghost away. If they are missing, it will come on board and the fishermen will be dragged into the sea. That would not be good.
Og da blir gjerne fiskeren dradd ned I dypet og drukner av draugen. Så det ikke bra.
The heritage of the Vikings is still a source of identity in Norway today. A faithful replica of the Oseberg ship gives an impression of the shipbuilding art of the Vikings. Norway has one of the longest and most spectacular coasts in the world. All fjords, bays and islands together would probably add up to more than 100,000 kilometers. The slopes of Nordfjord glow in lush green in summer. Bjørk Devik Aurelian's herb garden grows on the steep slope. A trained gardener, she grows kitchen herbs and edible flowers. Wildflowers grow on a part of her property. Now in Midsommar, it is harvest time. Bjørk is assisted by her co-worker, May Nyborg, from the neighboring village. The 2 women harvest meadowsweet.
This flower tastes slightly like almonds. It is also called the vanilla of Scandinavia, although it does not quite taste like vanilla. It is used in pastries and desserts as vanilla sugar. The taste is slightly different from real vanilla. Summer in Norway is very special because of the long, bright days. Because it is cold in winter, we especially appreciate the warmth. As a herb grower, I have a hectic summer professionally. Nature determines everything. It has its own pace, and my job is to observe what is happening and do the right thing at the right time so as to get products of the best possible quality. This is exhausting and at the same time a pleasure. We always say that we have to wait until autumn and winter to sleep.
The steep fjord slope has a microclimate. It gets very warm in the summer. That's why even some Mediterranean plants thrive in Bjørk's herb garden.
Today we cut our thyme. We grow about 25 different kinds of herbs, and I don't even know if I can list them all right now. We grow herbs for teas as well as spices.
The biggest advantage, but also the biggest challenge for Bjørk, is the steep slope. Machines can't be used here. Even a small tractor would capitulate on this slope. The herbs enjoy the sun-exposed position.
This is perfectly fine for the plants. On the slope they grow best, probably because then water does not stand and consequently the plants do not suffer frost damage in the winter. Here we have sun in the morning and not in the evening. This is ideal for the herbs.
There is only one helpful tool, the self-made ropeway.
We use the cable car because we don't have to carry the boxes to the top. It is quite steep here and we would have to carry the boxes quite far. With the ropeway we spare our arms. It is a good aid.
So the herbs go on their short journey to the drying shed. The herbs are gently dried before they are delivered. Many restaurant chefs from the area ask for exotic kitchen herbs. Björk can't and won't deliver those.
My concept is I wanted to find out which herbs grow best in our climate. But now it is the case that many cooks like to use rosemary and basil. I've sorted out these herbs because I do not necessarily want to grow what is currently in or trendy, but also what grows here wildly and can be harvested.
Summer is the season not only on the fjord, but also in the mountains, on the mountain pastures, to stock up for the winter. It's early in the morning, and Niels is enjoying the first rays of sunshine at breakfast. After all, he is on vacation. His wife Katarina is already back at work. The life of a dairymaid is hard. Today, just like back then.
My great-grandmother had moved from the neighbouring valley when she started working here as a dairymaid, and when new ones come they are always subjected to tests. When she had just started, some of her goats got lost on a very steep ledge, but also very good grass grew there. Steep, very dangerous to go there. She didn't get any help from the others though, they just sat up here with their arms folded and waited to see what would happen. So poor Berit had to climb up, and the goats rushed at her. She had to lie flat on the ground. The goats jumped over her and she managed to get them down unharmed. It was only then that she was invited for coffee.
The house is unchanged since the last dairymaid of the family gave up work in the 60s. When Katarina revived the mountain pasture, she simply started where her predecessor left off. Katarina makes cheese from the fresh cows and goat's milk she has milked in the morning.
This house here on the mountain pasture was built exclusively to process milk, so this is not a vacation home. This is the living room. This is where I live, but the living room is also where the cheese is made. It is very important that everything here is very clean. We have to clean every day, mop the floor every day. The utensils and everything that is made of wood is washed with a decoction of juniper in the big tub there. Cleanliness is terribly important in this house, and we have learnt that.
The Alpine hut is small, but perfect in its function. While the oven warms the living room and bedroom, the cool north side of the house hides the Holy of Holies, the ripening chamber.
Tradition has it that the most beautiful gift a woman moving into a new house could receive was a board from the cheese shed of her home farm, because it had the good microorganisms that she could take to her new house. So these boards are very valuable, and I will keep them as long as possible. They are about 180 years old and contain tons of good microorganisms.
The wooden utensils in the cheese room still serve their purpose today. In a particularly elaborate form, the mysterious caramel cheese matures from whey.
This is brown cheese. Now we can take it out of the mould and eat it. This is a Norwegian specialty. Almost all Norwegians have brown cheese on their sandwiches.
The motifs of hand-carved shapes are not only decorative, they have a deeper meaning.
The peculiarity of this old mould is that it has a cross. This was very common in moulds for cheese in the past. The cross was supposed to protect the food. Out in nature and on the mountain pasture, there are many different forces, good and bad. This cross should protect against evil forces. Up here on the mountain pasture, all the food for winter was made. If something went wrong with the food, people below did poorly for the rest of the winter.
How hard the Norwegian winter can even be guessed in summer. It has snowed further north towards Oppdal. In the Dovrefjell Mountains, that's nothing special, even in midsummer. The mountain range is considered the border between south and central Norway. Dovrefjell is a protected habitat for reindeer, lemmings and musk oxen. The attraction of the national park. This is the new home of the Arctic foxes from the breeding station in Oppdal. They seem to be comfortable here and will hopefully breed. Southwest towards Bergen, fjords dominate the landscape. They were formed by glaciers that pushed through river valleys and widened them during the Ice Age. The melting led to a rise in sea level. The water flowed into the deep valleys. Thanks to the Gulf Stream of the Atlantic Ocean, the climate here is warmer than other places located on the same latitude, such as Alaska. After the Sokna Fjord, the Hardanger Fjord is the second largest in Norway. Thanks to the mild climate, apple trees thrive on the steep slopes. It has been the orchard of Norway since the 14th century. In June, apple farmer Jane Larsen is busy bringing order to her orchard.
I'm picking the apples that we call weaklings, so that the apples that remain grow big and sweet. Here we have a large one and a small one close together, and there I take away the smallest and leave the biggest one hanging. When there are too many apples on the tree, then there is a so-called rest year. Then the tree is so exhausted that no more apples grow.
If this slope was 2,000 kilometers further south, grapes would probably be grown on it. In Hardanger, the short summer is just enough for the apple harvest.
The soil is very good in Hardanger. It was discovered a long time ago that it is so fertile. Hardanger is therefore also called Norway's orchard. The sun shines a little longer here in the summer than in the rest of the country. It is also very steep, which means that the work is very difficult for us, but it is good for the trees.
Apples can be used to make not only juice, but also alcoholic beverages. Cider is a regional specialty with a controlled designation of origin.
Cider came to Norway with the Cistercian monks. They lived in Hardanger in the 14th century. They taught the people of Hardanger to plant apple trees and to use the apples. At that time, sugar also came to Norway as a commodity and could be used to increase the alcohol content of the cider. It tasted very sweet, and that was the other side of the coin.
In Norway, beverages with more than 4.7% alcohol may only be sold in the state wine monopoly. Cider is considered the light version of wine in Scandinavia.
I smell the fragrance of the discovery apple. You can smell it in the garden when it's ripe, and that's what this cider smells like. It smells sweetly of ripe fruit. Very fruity, but also fresh. Almost a little like marzipan when you inhale. The aftertaste is fresh as lemon, exciting.
During the First World War, alcohol was banned in Norway. Cider disappeared into the cellars. Now it's to become a Norwegian cultural asset again.
For the red one, we used raspberries and apples. They fermented in the same tank. It is fantastic with chocolate and cheese, but we also have very still varieties without bubbles. It goes well with a variety of dishes. This one is very good with crabs, fish and shellfish. Then we have other varieties with meat and also with desserts. So it actually goes well with any occasion. This is the answer of the North to champagne.
From Hardanger Fjord, it's about 100 kilometers to Bergen. The old Hanseatic city is considered the secret cultural capital of Norway, although it only has 280,000 inhabitants. It's also known as the rainiest city in Europe. Boat builder Beard Osmundsen's workshop is located in Ås. The traditional wooden boat Åselva is still built here.
These are both sailing and rowing boats. The smaller boats were mainly used in the fjord between the islands. But with the larger ones, with up to 8 rowers, they also went out to the open sea.
A wooden boat can only be as good as the tree from which it is built. When Berit plans a new boat, she personally goes to the forest to choose the tree for it. Not every tree is good enough for her expert eye.
First, the tree has to be the right age, mature. This can be seen from the crown of the tree, which must no longer be so pointed, but flattened. Then the tree is mature. The bark is also important. It should be as light as possible and not have a coarse but a fine structure. I look to see if a tree is big enough to build boats out of, an osselvar. You have to know your own body, your own dimensions to do this. I know that a tree has to be this thick for me. It has to have this circumference. But it's also allowed to be this thick. That's even better.
The summer solstice plays a major role in many northern cultures. The longest day of the year is celebrated on June the 21st. Norwegians celebrate the event a little later, on the eve of June the 24th, the birthday of John the Baptist. St. Hans is therefore actually a Christian holiday, but the pagan customs have survived. People light fires all over the country. This year as well, the biggest one takes place in Alesund. The builders of the wooden tower have worked through the last nights and have just finished. Everyone is correspondingly tired. Before their work goes up in flames, they strengthen themselves. Oscar, this year's fire chief, gives final instructions.
It means a lot to me. It's a long-standing family tradition. Both my uncles, my father and my cousins have been there and helped build the tower. They also were fire chiefs. That means a lot to me. I feel good about it. It's a good feeling to be the fire chief. It's great to continue that tradition. I can't imagine anything better.
Girls have not come to the party. This is men's business, with a lot of noise. The puberty-induced testosterone excess starts moving towards the fireplace around 9 o'clock in the evening. The fire tower has made Alesund famous. The lighting of the Midsummer fire is eagerly awaited. Only the young people who climb the tower to light the fire must remain sober.
We climb all the way to the top while being secured. That's the hardest job. When we get to the top, we ignite an emergency rocket and throw it into the barrel and climb back down. There's a mixture of diesel and sawdust in the barrel, and then everything goes by itself.
This year, the tower, made of pallets and wooden barrels, is almost 40 meters high. Now comes the all-important moment.
Sånn der. Er du der?
The tower is on fire, and the young fire chief Oscar is relieved.
Overwhelming, stressful. It was important that everything went well, as there were 6 people up there. We had laid out a plan for ourselves downstairs, calm and controlled. A few had also been up there before. We climbed up, talked a little, took lots of pictures. That was it.
This is how Midsummer's Eve begins in Alesund. Well, that's only the start. The fires on St. Hans are supposed to drive away evil spirits. Around the year 1000, Christianity established itself in Norway. But the belief in nature spirits lives on to this day. They populate the secluded mountains and valleys, and the people do well to come to terms with them. The dairy woman Katarina Sparstad firmly believes in the invisible roommates. Huldra's lovely female figures who cleverly hide a cow's tail. According to legend, they live on the sandy hills in the area.
The Hauga folk lives here. This is where the Huldras live. This is known to all who have spent a little time here. These are beings that live underground, preferably under the sandhills. You can get along with them as long as you are nice to them and respect nature. Huldras love to play a little prank on you. The milk in the bucket turns sour, things disappear. I must confess, once in the 25 summers I've spent up here, I was mean to a cow. I hit her lightly with my stick, and then I also said something unkind because she didn't do what I wanted. And that's when the stick slipped out of my hand and flew so that it hit me right in the face. That served me right.
On Midsummer, Norwegians celebrate the longest day of the year, aware that from now on, the days will be shorter again.
On the actual Midsummer Eve, we usually are down in the village. We celebrate with a fire and the neighbours get together. But sometimes one stays at home with a smaller fire. The most important thing is to be outside and enjoy the light. It's fantastic when it's been so dark the rest of the year. And then the light comes, and it's bright all of the time. Every year again, it's a great miracle.
Waffles for the summer guests who may pass by Katarina's mountain pasture on their hike to experience the magic of the long summer nights in seclusion. In Alesund, the sea off the small island of Slinningsbålet is littered with boats. Everyone is waiting for this year's highlight of the St. Hans celebration. Mathias Haga, who was the fire chief a few years ago, knows how much the successful Midsummer celebration means to his successors.
I'm so happy. I have no words. It's a beautiful bonfire, fireworks, and everybody is having fun. This is like, for us, this is the national day for Slinningsbålet and Hassa, the island we live on. I'm proud.
Midsummer in Norway, a whole country in a frenzy. At midnight, the sun still briefly flashes from behind the mountains and turns night into day. There is still enough sleep in winter.